In this video, we're going to look at how to solve one-step equations using addition and subtraction. The main focus of what I want you to get out of this is how to show that one step in order to get the variable by itself. Anytime you're solving an equation, you can use inverse operations in order to find out what the value of your variable is. So to start, we're going to look at a really simple example, and again, the whole focus is on showing the correct step. So if I start with the equation x plus 5 equals 7, in order to get the variable by itself, I need to get rid of the 5 positives that are with it. So the one step I need to show on both sides is minus 5. And if I do that on the left-hand side, I also need to do that on the right-hand side. That'll keep my equation balanced, and I'll be able to get the correct answer. So positive 5 and negative 5, together that is 0. That's 5 0 pairs. So that's going to cancel, and I'm left with x on the left-hand side, and then 7 minus 5 is 2. So we get x equals 2. And again, I know you probably could have done that in your head, but it really is important to make sure that we can show the 5 negatives on both sides. The next part might be a little bit new. This is the check it step. This is how we can be sure that we have the correct answer. In the check it step, we're going to start with the original equation. So I'm just going to copy what that said. And then in place of x, I'm going to substitute in what I said x was equal to. So I have a 2 in place of x, and then when I add 5, I get 7 on the left-hand side, which is equal to 7 on the right-hand side, and so I know for sure that x equals 2 is the correct answer. All right, now we're going to up it just a little bit and look at what happens when I have subtraction. So we're still using inverse operations. I'm going to start with z minus 8 equals 2. And the inverse operation of subtracting 8 is adding 8. Or the way to cancel out 8 negatives is to put in 8 positives. So the step that we need to show is adding 8 to both sides. So 8 negatives plus 8 positives is 0. And we're left with z on the left-hand side. 2 plus 8 is 10, and so we get z equals 10. Now for the check it step, I'm going to start with the original equation, and in place of z, I'm going to substitute in 10. And then we're just going to make sure that this actually works out. So sometimes you'll see a little question mark above the equal sign in your check it step, just saying, are these two things equal? And then after you work it out, you can say, yep, 2 is equal to 2. So we know for sure that 10 is the correct answer to that equation. All right, now that we've had some basics of what those steps look like, we'll do a few more examples that might have some more negatives in them. So original equation is negative 7 plus y equals negative 10. We still need to get y by itself. You're always going to do the solving step on the side with the variable. And so to get rid of these 7 negatives, we're going to add 7 positives to both sides. And you'll always line up your like terms, so that way things can cancel or combine. So here's your 0 pairs. And we're left with y equals negative 3. Okay, with our check it step, I'm going to start with my original equation. In place of y, I'm going to put negative 3. And then I'm just going to bring down everything else. Negative 7 plus equals negative 10. So negative 7 plus negative 3, right now I'm checking to see if that's true. 7 negatives plus 3 negatives is 10 negatives. So I know for sure that negative 3 is the correct answer. So now that you're able to do a check it step, you can always be sure that your answer is correct. Definitely recommend doing that on homeworks or tests or quizzes. All right, moving on, we'll do an example. This one has decimals in it, and it has C, or the variable, on the opposite side from the last one that we did. So we'll start with copying down the equation. I still want the variable by itself. So right now with the variable, I have plus 1 and 5/10. So to get rid of the 1 and 5/10, the opposite of adding is subtracting. And I'm going to subtract 1 and 5/10 from both sides. So I have 0 pairs here, and I'm doing negative 5/10 minus negative 1 and 5/10. You could do keep at opposite. It would look like this. And since these have the same signs, I'm going to add the absolute values and keep the same sign. So final answer, negative 2 equals C. It is perfectly fine for you to have the variable on the right-hand side. You don't need to change anything. We'll just leave it there. All right, check it step. Start with the equation, and in place of C, I'm going to put negative 2. And then everything else can come straight down. And I'm going to make sure that that's actually true. All right, when we do negative 2 plus 1 and 5/10, these have different signs, which means I need to subtract the absolute values. So we'll borrow. And then I had more negative than positive, so this is going to be a negative. So I get negative 5/10. And when I look at the other side, that is exactly what I wanted it to be. So if it came out to something different, then I know that I would need to go back and double check my answer because I probably made a mistake. All right, video wouldn't be complete without a fraction example. Steps will still be the same though. So I've got Z plus 3/2 equals 1/2. So still look at getting Z by itself. To undo adding 3/2, I'm going to subtract 3/2 from both sides. So here are my 0 pairs, and I'm left with Z on the left-hand side. 1/2 minus 3/2, denominators stay the same since they're both 2, and 1 minus 3, or 1 plus negative 3, is negative 2. And then this actually can be simplified. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So I end up with Z equals negative 1. All right, we'll go ahead and check that. I'll copy the original equation and plug in a negative 1 in place of Z, and check to see, does that in fact equal 1/2? So negative 1 can be rewritten as negative 1 over 1, and then a common denominator would be negative 2/2, if I just multiply both of those by 2, plus 3/2. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, and then the denominators stay the same. So I do end up with 1/2 on the left and on the right, which means negative 1 was the correct answer. All right. Right here, I would like for you to pause the video, go ahead and try them, be sure that you show the steps, and then once you've done that, you can go ahead and hit play to check your answers. All right, I'm going to do this in pieces. On each of your equations, be sure that you have that step written in. If you skipped that step, go back and add plus 5 on both sides, minus 10.2 on both sides, and plus 5 6 on both sides. From there, we can go ahead and cancel out 0 pairs and get to our final answers. On number 2, you will need to put 10.2 above 7.6 so that you're actually able to subtract. And since you had 10 negatives and 7 positives, this would be negative 2 and 6 tenths. And then third one, negative 1 plus 5 is 4, and 4/6 would simplify down to 2/3. All right, it did ask us to check our solutions, so I filled in the starting equation for each one. 4 minus 5 is the same as 4 plus negative 5, and 4 plus negative 5 does equal negative 1. So I know that 4 is the correct answer for that first one. Second one, I'm going to plug in negative 2 and 6 tenths. We'll see if that equals 7 and 6 tenths. These have different signs, so I need to subtract with the bigger number on top. Oops, that should be a 9. And then when I subtract, I get 7 and 6 tenths on each side. And then final one, I can plug in either of these. I'm going to go ahead and do 4/6 just because it's already in common denominator form. And we'll see, does that actually equal negative 1/6? So subtraction, we'll do keep, add, opposite. Negative 4 plus negative, or sorry, 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. And we get negative 1/6 on each side. So all three of those answers with their check it step. All right, next couple, we are going to translate the words into an equation, and then we can go ahead and solve. So first thing, it says the sum of something. Sum means that we're going to add. So I'm adding two things together. I have a number h and negative 7. So h plus negative 7. Anytime you see the word is, that's going to be your equal sign. So is would be equal, is equivalent to, all equals, and then I've got 4. So starting equation, h plus negative 7 equals 4. To cancel out 7 negatives, I'm going to add 7 positives to each side, cancel my 0 pairs, and get h equals 11. It didn't say that we needed to check our answer, so I can leave it just like that. All right, second one, 5 less than a number. Less than is going to mean subtraction. However, we do need to be a little bit cautious when we see the words less than. If we're doing 5 less than something, that really means that we are going to be subtracting 5. So we're actually going to change the order a little bit. Less than means something minus 5. And then we have a number g. We have the word is, and then negative 9 spelled out. So g minus 5 equals negative 9. From there, add 5 to both sides. We have 0 pairs with g left on the left-hand side, and negative 9 plus 5 is negative 4. So that's what it would look like to write an equation and then solve it. All right, next, a company makes a profit of $1.4 million. This is $2.9 million more than last year. What was the profit last year? All right, we are going to start by identifying our variable. The question always tells you what variable that you can use. So I'm going to use P to represent last year's profit. Then from there, I can go ahead and piece together the rest of the equation. So it says that they made $1.4 million. I'll put dollars and million back on at the end. It says that amount is, so equals 2.9 million more than which would be addition, last year. And last year we have as P, since that's the thing that we don't know. All right, one-step equation is set up to get rid of the 2.9 that's with P. This is positive 2.9, so I'm going to subtract 2.9 from both sides. So 0 pair, and then I have a positive, and I'm taking away more than I have. So you could also do keep, add, opposite. These have different signs, so I need to subtract. And then this is going to be a negative since I'm taking away more than I have. So final answer, this was negative $1.5 million, which was last year's profit. Be sure on word problems you include dollar sign, and then since this was in millions, I would also need to include that. All right, final example for today is a geometry example. Write and solve an equation to find the unknown side length. The total perimeter is 10 inches, and we have 2 of the 3 sides labeled with actual values. Remember that perimeter is when you add up all 3 sides for a triangle, or however many sides for whatever shape it is, to get the total distance around the shape. So if I add 3 plus 2 plus x, altogether that needs to add up to 10. From there, combine like terms, 2 plus 3 is 5, and then we can subtract 5 from each side to get x equals 5. Since it gave me some units and I've got a word problem, I'm going to include inches at the very end. So final answer, this side would be 5 inches long. And looking at it, that seems like it could be reasonable. All right, thank you for watching, and good luck showing your steps and solving one-step equations with addition and subtraction.